We'll now hear from Minnesota State Public Defender John Stuart.
Thank you. I'm a defense lawyer, but I'm very aware of how much harm sex offenses do. So I'm interested in the public health model as a possibility of finding ways to reduce the harm. And I'd like to try to apply this line of thought to what we do here in Minnesota. First of all, if we were starting to develop a sex offense policy in Minnesota from scratch today, we would know three facts. We would know that over 90% of the offenses are perpetrated by a known person. We would know that the recidivism in these cases is very low. The sentencing guidelines reported last year 3%. We would know that there's effective treatment for sex offenders. So with those facts in mind, let's walk through a fairly common situation. Let's just hypothesize sexual touching of a 6-year-old by an uncle. Okay, the present approach in Minnesota in the vast majority of these cases like that, we're very well organized to do nothing about it. First of all, 80% of those cases are not going to be reported. Okay, there's a huge base of cases that you never see that aren't going to be reported. Of the 20% of the cases that are reported, you may get 2 successful prosecutions. So out of 100 of these offenses, for those 2 people that are successfully prosecuted, they may get stayed sentences, depending on the circumstances. For a first offense, they may get 90 months in prison. They may get community notification. They will get registration. They may get civil commitment. But for 98 people out of the 100, we aren't doing anything. And so that's the appeal of the public health approach, is that it opens up the possibility of affecting more people and preventing more harm than we can do by just prosecuting those 2 guys. So here are some of the things we could do. The public health approach in Minnesota, if we wanted to do it, we could provide confidential therapy for the uncle before he does the act. We could educate parents on warning signs before they leave their child alone with the uncle. We could empower the child to be able to talk to the parents about the situation. We could encourage the parents to report. We could provide prosecutors with alternatives, and we could also perhaps give them the political cover to actually dare to use an alternative. We have, for instance, in the area of drug offenses, we have a statute called 152.18 where you can get treatment, and if you succeed, your conviction is never adjudicated. Okay? We could consider doing that with some of these cases. We could, of course, prosecute and incapacitate the very most dangerous people out of this group. But right now, that's that small number is the group that we put the most resources and attention on, while the other 98 people, nothing is happening. Now, why wouldn't we deploy this range of resources of education, prevention, treatment? Why wouldn't we do this? Look how we do it in the area of drunk driving. We've got designated driver campaigns. We've got billboards all over the city about picking a designated driver. We've got DWI courts. We've got ignition interlock. People have thought a lot about how to reduce the harm from drunk driving. Why don't they think about how to reduce the harm from the sex offenders? Well, here's why I think that is. It's because most people in Minnesota think that the drunk driver is one of us. Anybody could go to a bar and have a couple too many beers and drive home and be caught and be a drunk driver. But the sex offender, we visualize, as Kieran's video showed us, as a monster. Okay, not one of us. Way not one of us. So then the next question that comes to me is, what does anybody gain by having this visualization of the sex offender as the monster? Well, one thing is, I think we are culturally predisposed to like having a monster so that we can feel good when we get rid of the monster. I was teasing Kieran over the weekend about the central myth in the UK about St. George and the dragon. And very briefly, the story is that, see, there's this dragon, and he's threatening beautiful young women, specifically maidens. And St. George comes along and cuts off his head. That's the story. Very central story in the culture in the UK. You can see it would not be satisfying if St. George came along and made the monster go to treatment. We're satisfied when the monster has to have its head cut off. Another theory, though, is that by having the sex offender be a monster, we're encouraged not to look at ourselves. We're encouraged not to look at our uncle. We're encouraged not to look at our minister. We're encouraged to think, well, there's a monster out there, and St. George will come along, cut off his head. Now, this is not to deny that there are some very, very dangerous people out there that we need to keep out of circulation. I'm well aware of that, but by putting all our time and attention and resources into this very small number of very dangerous people and visualizing all sex offenders as being this monster, we are failing to prevent an awful lot of terrible incidents that could have been prevented if we would have taken another line of thought. So I think that's what Kieran McCartan is inviting us to do today, and I'm glad to be part of the discussion. Thank you.